Welcome to the deep dive. Today we'll be exploring something I find really fascinating, how wind, something we often take for granted, can actually shape entire landscapes.
Yeah, it's true. We're going to be diving into what's called Aeolian weathering and erosion, or how wind shapes the surface of our planet.
We've got some really fascinating research lined up here. I'm curious to see what we find out. I know I always picture like big windswept deserts. Is that what we're talking about, or is there
Um,
more?
you're right, deserts are definitely a prime example, but, these processes can happen anywhere where the wind can pick up and move sediment. So, coastlines, river valleys, even agricultural fields.
Even like a gentle breeze then could be kind of a tiny force for change over time.
Exactly.
So let's break down the basics a bit. What exactly is happening during this Aeolian weathering and erosion?
So, it's all about the wind acting on rock and soil. And so weathering is that kind of breakdown process. You can imagine rock being slowly chipped away or even cracked by the force of the wind. And then erosion is the transportation phase. So that's where those weathered bits get picked up and carried off.
So it's like a two-part process. First, the wind weakens the material, and then it's almost like a delivery service carrying those particles away.
Exactly.
Does that mean wind is the only thing that shapes these landscapes?
Oh, not at all. There are other factors at play too. Water, ice, gravity. They're all major players. Think about like a rainstorm, right? It's not just the water itself, but the force of that water hitting the ground that causes erosion. Wind is just one part of this complex system of change.
Makes sense. It's all connected. But, since we are focusing on wind today, what are some of the most striking examples of its power? I'm sure you have some favorites.
Oh, absolutely. One that always, captures my imagination is abrasion. So this is essentially the wind using sand and tiny particles like sandpaper to gradually polish and shape exposed rock surfaces.
So like nature's sandblasting process, I'm picturing those smooth, almost otherworldly rock formations you sometimes see in pictures.
Yeah, exactly. Those are called ventifacts. And their smooth surfaces, they can even tell us about the direction of the prevailing winds that shape them over time. We also see things called yardangs. And these are, much larger streamlined ridges that look like almost like giant waves frozen in stone.
Wow. Amazing how something we can't even see can create such massive features. It's like the wind is this invisible artist.
Uh-huh.
Are there any other examples of these almost like sculptural landforms?
Zoigon are particularly fascinating. Imagine a mushroom-shaped rock where the base, made of softer rock, has eroded more quickly, leaving this, whimsical, almost delicate-looking cap on top.
Wow. It makes you wonder just how long it takes for those formations to develop.
Hmm.
It's a reminder of just how vast the timescales involved are in these geological processes.
Yeah.
But wind isn't just about wearing things down, right? It also builds things up.
That's right. As the wind carries those weathered particles, eventually it has to deposit them somewhere. And that's where we get features like dunes, those iconic mounds or ridges of sand.
Yeah. Dunes are probably what most people picture when they think of like deserts or wind-shaped landscapes.
Yeah.
Is there a specific way they form?
Well, think about what happens when wind hits an obstacle like a rock, or even a clump of vegetation. It slows down, loses some of its carrying capacity, and so the sand starts to settle around that obstacle.
So it's almost like a chain reaction then. The initial pile of sand creates a bigger obstacle, which traps even more sand, and the dune just grows over time.
Exactly. And the shape of the dune is determined by a combination of factors: wind direction, wind speed, and the amount of sand available. There's actually a lot of variety in dune shapes, from those crescent-shaped Burchand dunes to the more complex star dunes that form in areas with shifting wind patterns.
I'm already picturing in my mind how those different dune shapes create a variety of microenvironments within the larger landscape. So it's not just like a flat, empty desert, but it's a mosaic of habitats sculpted by the wind.
You got it. And that brings us to one of the key takeaways of, this whole deep dive. These processes aren't just about creating cool-looking landscapes. They actually directly influence the types of plants and animals that can even survive in those environments.
Yeah, that makes sense. The wind's not just a sculptor, it's shaping entire ecosystems. I'm curious to hear more about that connection.
Well, think about those dunes, right? Some plants, they thrive on those shifting sands, while others prefer the more stable slopes. And the types of plants that are present determine which insects or reptiles or mammals can call that dune home.
So the wind is almost like a landscape architect, creating this diverse array of living spaces. What about those areas where the wind is constantly picking up and carrying away material? Does that have like a negative impact?
It certainly can. Wind erosion can be a major problem, especially in areas with loose topsoil and strong winds. The loss of topsoil can reduce soil fertility, it can make it harder for plants to grow, and it can even lead to desertification.
That makes me think about dust storms. Those dramatic events where massive amounts of dust are just lifted into the air.
Yeah.
Are those purely destructive, or is there a positive side to those?
They're definitely a double-edged sword.
So they sound pretty intense. What kind of impact can dust storms have?
Well, they can be incredibly destructive. They can cause major transportation disruptions because of low visibility.
Oh, yeah.
And inhaling all that dust can be a serious health hazard, especially for people with respiratory issues. But, there's also a fascinating positive side.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What could possibly be positive about these giant clouds of dust?
Well, those dust particles, they're actually carrying vital nutrients. Think of it as nature's way of, fertilizing the planet on a massive scale.
So even though they can cause damage locally, they might be beneficial elsewhere, like a redistribution of resources driven by the wind.
Precisely. For example, dust from the Sahara Desert is carried across the Atlantic Ocean and deposited in the Amazon rainforest,
Wow.
providing essential nutrients for plant growth.
That kind of blows my mind. It really shows how interconnected everything is. We've been talking about the destructive power of the wind. But what about its role in actually helping ecosystems thrive?
Well, wind plays a crucial role in plant reproduction.
Okay.
It acts as a pollinator, carrying pollen from one plant to another, allowing them to reproduce and diversify. And for plants that rely on wind dispersal, their seeds have evolved some really remarkable adaptations.
I'm picturing those dandelion seeds that float so effortlessly on the breeze.
Exactly. Those seeds are lightweight and have these feathery structures that help them catch the wind,
Yeah.
allowing them to travel long distances and colonize new areas.
It makes you realize that even a gentle breeze can have such a profound impact on the distribution of life across a landscape. It's not just about, shaping that physical environment, but about connecting those ecosystems through that movement of seeds and pollen.
Yeah. It's a beautiful dance between the wind and the living world. And speaking of that dance, let's go back to those dunes for a moment. You mentioned that they create these, diverse microenvironments. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah. So imagine a single dune. You've got the windward side where the wind is hitting directly. That side's constantly shifting, being reshaped. It's a pretty challenging environment for most plants. But on the leeward side, the slope is more protected from the wind, creating a more stable environment where different plant species can thrive.
It's like the dune itself provides shelter from the very force that created it.
Exactly. And those variations in plant life then create a mosaic of habitats for insects, reptiles, even small mammals. You might have a beetle that specializes in living on that exposed windward slope, while a lizard prefers that sheltered leeward side.
So even within a single dune, you have this whole ecosystem shaped by these subtle variations in wind exposure.
Yeah. It's a great example of how those seemingly invisible forces can create the conditions for life to flourish. We've talked a lot about deserts, but are there other environments where wind plays, a key role in shaping ecosystems?
Oh yeah, coastal areas are another great example. Just think about, those windswept beaches with their unique plant life.
Yeah, I'm picturing those tough, salt-tolerant grasses that seem to thrive in those, kind of harsh conditions.
Exactly. Those plants have adapted to withstand strong winds, salt spray, even burial by shifting sands. And those specialized plants provide habitat for a whole community of, coastal creatures, from birds to crabs to insects.
It's amazing how life finds a way to thrive, even in these seemingly inhospitable environments.
It is, and it highlights that important role that wind plays in, creating and maintaining biodiversity. By shaping landforms, influencing plant life, and dispersing seeds and pollen, wind contributes to that incredible variety of life that we see on our planet.
Yeah, it's like this never-ending cycle of change and adaptation, all driven by this invisible force.
Thinking about those coastal environments makes me wonder about, the impact of wind on erosion along those coastlines.
That's a great point. Wind plays a significant role in shaping coastlines, especially in areas with, cliffs or sand dunes.
Yeah, I can picture those dramatic cliffs being slowly carved away by that, relentless pounding of the waves and the wind.
Yeah, you're right. The wind can pick up sand and other particles, essentially using them as tools to erode the softer rock layers of those cliffs. It's like this slow-motion sandblasting process that can significantly alter the shape of the coastline over time.
Another example of how those seemingly subtle forces can have a massive impact on the landscape. And I imagine that process is being affected by, rising sea levels and changing weather patterns.
Absolutely. As the climate changes, we're seeing more intense storms, stronger winds in many coastal regions.
Yeah. And that means increased erosion, which can lead to, the loss of beaches, damage to coastal infrastructure, even the displacement of entire communities.
It's a reminder that understanding these natural processes is more important now than ever, as we face these challenges of a changing climate.
It is. And that understanding can help us make, more informed decisions about how to protect our coastlines and adapt to those changes.
It sounds like there's a lot more to explore when it comes to that relationship between wind and our planet. What other aspects of this topic should we delve into?
Well, we've focused a lot on the physical and ecological impacts of wind, but there's another dimension to this story that's worth exploring, and that's how humans have harnessed the power of wind throughout history.
Oh yeah, that's a fascinating angle. We're thinking about, sailboats and windmills. Those are classic examples of harnessing wind energy.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about how humans have kind of partnered with this natural force to achieve some pretty incredible things. For exploration, for transportation, even generating power.
Absolutely. From the early explorers who sailed the seas using wind power to the modern wind turbines that, generate clean electricity, we've come a long way in harnessing that energy of the wind.
It makes you wonder what other possibilities are out there for using wind in kind of innovative ways.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of potential. Researchers are, exploring new technologies and applications all the time, from using wind to power drones for delivery to developing more efficient wind turbines for offshore energy generation.
It sounds like wind could play an even bigger role in our future as we look for, those sustainable solutions to kind of global challenges. I think so. And as we continue to learn more about these complex interactions between wind and the earth, we can make, more informed decisions about how to work with this powerful force in a way that benefits, both people and the planet.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. We've covered so much, everything from the ways that wind shapes the landscape to its influence on ecosystems and even its potential for addressing some of our most pressing challenges. What a journey.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind tour of Aeolian processes. And I think it highlights something really remarkable, the power of these seemingly invisible forces to shape our world.
That's a great way to put it. We often focus on, those big, obvious forces of nature, like earthquakes or hurricanes.
Hmm.
But wind, despite its invisibility, it's constantly at work, sculpting those landforms, influencing plant and animal life, even connecting ecosystems across vast distances.
Yeah. It's a reminder that there's always more to discover, even in those seemingly empty spaces around us.
This has definitely left me with a newfound appreciation for the wind and all its wonders and complexities. I mean, look at those gentle breezes and those powerful gusts in a whole new light.
Yeah, and I hope our listeners will too. The next time you feel the wind on your face, just take a moment to think about that incredible journey those air molecules have been on and the countless ways that they're shaping our planet.
What a beautiful thought. And it leads me to a final question for our listeners to ponder. As we learn more about this intricate dance between wind and the earth, how can we use that knowledge to create a more sustainable and resilient future for ourselves and for all life on this planet?
So that's a wonderful question to leave our listeners with. It encourages us to think about our own role in this complex system and to consider how our actions can either harness or hinder that power of the wind.
We've seen how wind can be both a creative force and a destructive one. The more we understand about its influence, the better equipped we'll be to work with it in a way that benefits both, humanity and the natural world.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we're part of this interconnected web of life and
Mhm.
our choices have, ripple effects that extend far beyond ourselves.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of wind, let's carry that sense of interconnectedness with us. Let's be mindful of the power of this invisible force and strive to live in a way that honors its role in shaping our planet. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those winds of curiosity blowing.